They'd tell me about their field trips. Researchers would come back exhausted, covered in mud and mosquito bites, but they grinned from ear to ear as they told me what it was like. They'd travel to the edge of the desert, where the sun baked for most days of the year. After a day's driving, you'd reach a forest full of gum trees, and only when you step into it you realise that the entire forest is floating. These were true oases, inland seas where skies were filled with waterbirds, fat fish swam through tiny creeks, choruses of frogs pierced the night sky. Reeds were so lush and thickly matted that not even water could pass through them. But this burst of life was only temporary out there. When the floodwaters finally disappeared, the birds would fly off, the fish would retreat to waterholes, frogs would burrow in mud to survive the hot and dry weather until the next flood arrived. I'd lived in Sydney all my life, but never dreamt anything like this could exist only a day's drive away. I was just starting my research project, and I decided it was time to go check it out for myself. That night around the campfire, I learned that a river system is like a bloodstream. Storms in the mountaintops set the natural pulse, just like your heartbeat. Water flows into small streams that join to become rivers. When rivers reach the flat plains, they divide and branch like capillaries. If the pulse is really big, flows breach over the banks and inundate enormous arid regions, and nourish all the freshwater animals and plants in wetlands in the baking desert. Humans have benefited enormously from rivers. We build dams across rivers to clot the flow of water for hydroelectricity and water supply. We extract water from rivers to drink and grow food and fibre. We convert floodplains to farmlands by building levee banks that constrict the spread of nourishing flows. The natural pulse of many rivers no longer exists, and rivers have donated more water than they can afford to give. Freshwater plants and animals are left struggling to survive. For the last few years, I've been working on a tiny piece of the puzzle. I wanted to know if it was possible to resuscitate the pulse of rivers and release some of the barriers that constrict flows from reaching wetlands. My first port of call was a large dam that could hold enough water to fill 475 Olympic swimming pools. I built computer models of dams and simulated pulses of water. My next port of call was the earth structures built on floodplains. I counted over 2,000 kilometres of levee banks that formed a maze on the floodplain, making it very tricky for floods to pass through and very risky for houses and farms. I then spent months in a dark hole with little human contact and no concept of day or night. What I eventually found out was not rocket science, it was quite simple. I found out it was possible to return the pulse of flows to rivers. It was also possible to free constricted floodplains. There are many, many people around the world working on this as we speak. But they need your help, and it doesn't require a massive sacrifice of lifestyle or money, but it does require you to think smartly about how you use water. because every single time you turn on the tap, you're tempering with the pulse of a river. Every time you buy a product, you are also buying water that was used to make it. Water that was taken away from a frog, bird or fish somewhere in the world. Though it may have seemed like I was relaxing on a tropical island over the last 4 years, I did finally find an inland oasis, equally precious and equally vulnerable. And yes, the mozzies found that place too.